And when we say God is no longer a tyrant, that comes down to conceptions of God, of course. And I can appreciate wanting to think God is in control. Control looks appealing when your country just voted for pandemonium. Pandemonium with various motivations and degrees of awareness and intentionality. I mean, what would lead someone to believe and vote for a convicted rapist? Yesterday, I was interviewed by Josh Molina, whom some of you know is a local journalist. And he asked me, how do you deal with, there are people celebrating the outcome of the election, even gloating. My response is, you don't react. You might need to act, but don't react. Because unless they are part of the 1%, they're going to be susceptible to the same threats as so many of us who think differently. So this is a moment of introspection. I read one of Naomi Klein's books 7 or 8 years ago at the beginning of the first Trump presidency. The title of the book is No Is Not Enough. And towards the end of the book, she writes that Trump is the fulfillment of our society's trends. Things like the worship of wealth, needing more stuff, naively trusting all those billionaires to save us with philanthropy. But Naomi Klein, she wrote back then, Trump is who our society is. And in order for us to move forward, we all need to make sure that we have killed our inner Trump. Well, clearly not enough of us did that. And I'm going to say we should be happy that none of the purported assassination attempts worked, because it's not the external Trump that is so out there, so strange, so different. We're dealing with madness, right? I'm thinking of two kinds of madness: apathy and untrustworthiness. Apathy as the opposite of empathy, untrustworthiness as the opposite of credibility. Listen, listen, it is madness when you have people in Congress trying to facilitate an insurrection, but it's Rashida Tlaib who is censured as the only Palestinian American in Congress. That's madness. Where were you, Democrats? You didn't stand up for her. Nancy Pelosi. Nancy Pelosi has been the poster girl for AIPAC, for the American Israel Public Affairs Committee for decades. Now, I've told some of you this before, but I just need to go back to it. A year ago, just over a year ago, Diane and I were on vacation. We spent some time in Atlanta taking in Black history sites. I mean, we went to the Civil Rights Museum and to businesses, and we went to Tyler Perry's studios, things like that. But what was going to be perhaps the high point of our visit is we went to Ebenezer Baptist Church, where the King family once served. And they've built this much larger facility across the street. But the pastor of that church is Senator Reverend Raphael Warnock. And we were hoping that he would be on hand when we visited. And he was. So when he was standing there on the platform, because the building is quite big, I couldn't see what he was calling our attention to. But he said, we want to welcome our guests. There are 3 busloads of representatives from synagogues, one in Daytona Beach, one in Palm Beach, and one in Palo Alto. So, there was applause. I didn't think that much of it until later, because this was late October of last year. And it was before I didn't connect the dots right away that the possibility is that they were there to police the senator. And then I remembered Jimmy Carter saying that anybody elected to Congress, if they speak up for Palestinians, they probably won't be reelected. And we saw what happened to Jamal Bowman and Cori Bush. Now, I went back and looked at the more of the biography of Senator Warnock, found out that before he ran for office, he was a consistent voice for Palestinians. But when he ran for office, all of that disappeared. The same thing happened with Barack Obama. So the question, it begs the question, how many of them have credibility? We are all in a horror movie, and the killer is in the house. Now, after last Tuesday's election, our politicians and pundits are going to do plenty of Monday morning quarterbacking, finger pointing. But here's why we need to question everything. This is something that they can no longer suppress so easily. In fact, the day after the election, there was the headline of the New York Times opinion page was titled, "Democrats Ignored Gaza and Brought Down Their Own Party." It was written by Peter Beinart, who is himself Jewish, and is coming out with a book in January with the title, "Being Jewish After the Destruction of Gaza." Because as you know, we've been watching by video real-time coverage of genocide. We've been watching Gaza and Lebanon, and these videos connect us to our own society's memory and its shame. Because the United States did what Israel is doing long before cell phones. Read about Rosewood, Wilmington, Tulsa, the Trail of Tears, Hiroshima, Nagasaki, Vietnam, Libya, Iraq. As Reverend Jeremiah Wright said, and we never batted an eye. Folks, today, with bombs, you can eliminate schools, mosques, churches, hospitals, homes. What you cannot erase is shame. The barren landscape of Gaza, the toxic soil, the poisoned olive trees will testify for generations. But we keep pushing the mute button so we can't hear the screams of our own conscience. So we keep sending arms and money. Don't forget, because we're paying for it. And the shame remains. The shame swallows up our souls, and with it, our integrity and our credibility. Where there is no empathy, there is no credibility. We have Hunger Games. A friend of mine a couple of days ago who moves in circles that maybe I don't move in, or maybe I move in them, but people approach me differently. But she said that she's tired of hearing from incredibly privileged people in our community here in Santa Barbara that they're voting MAGA because they're tired of feeling shitty. In other words, reality is coming for them. This is a specific kind of madness. And for many of us, and likely you, like so true of me, is we feel very deeply. We feel things. For me, some might even call it a pathology. But I don't look at it as a curse. I mean, it has, over the years, I've lost sleep. I've thought about things, wondering maybe beyond what is appropriate. I don't know. But I feel things. I'm still grateful for the pain that comes because it's the one thread that keeps me linked to humanity. And in this moment, I need feminine energy. I thought of the word goddess because in my meditation, sometimes when I pray, Sometimes I will use a word, a phrase, a word repeatedly to help me get centered. And I thought of the word goddess, but I thought, nah, that has the word God in it. I think I'm going to skip that one. And you know, many Christian traditions think of Sophia as the embodiment of wisdom and Earth Mother. But I settled this week on Gaia, maybe because it's only two syllables instead of Sophia. I need feminine energy. A few weeks ago, our bathroom scale stopped working, and I opened up the back of it, and I could see kind of what the issue was, but I don't have those kind of tools. And we'd had it for at least 20 years, so I thought, okay, we might have to throw it away. And then Diane said, I bet Gary could fix it. Gary's our neighbor who lives across the street. So I took it over to Gary. And the next day he brought it back and it was working fine. That was a few weeks ago. So then yesterday, Gary was out in his yard and I was in the driveway here at our house. And Gary says, "Hey, how's that scale working for you?" And I said, "Gary, every time I weigh myself, I think of you." And Gary said, "You should." And then later I reflected on it and I thought, you know, there was a time when two heterosexual men could not say things like, "I was thinking of you," and "you should," right? Look, in ancient times, feminine deities were worshiped, but then God had to go and become a boss. You know, before we had national gods, there were tribal deities, and mostly the focus was provision and protection, care. But then there was, you know, this emergence of societies coming together, and the national gods were more about conquest. And so you had gods like Marduk and Zeus and Jupiter and Odin. And listen, for some time now, Jesus has been a national god. And I suppose researchers and columnists will eventually get around to acknowledging this. But I think you know that people's faith in Jesus have elevated the pandemonium vote. Let's call it Christian nationalism. Now, you know that there's a different Jesus who is not national, but radical. I still appreciate John 3:16. God so loved the world. Yeah. God loved everyone, everything. God so loved the world that she gave her only begotten child, that whoever believes in them should not perish, but have everlasting life. The next time someone asks you if you know Jesus, ask them, national Jesus or global Jesus? The Jesus that I'm acquainted with is about radical love. Whenever a society lacks empathy, their systems lack credibility. And we begin to ask ourselves, even when it comes time to vote, does it even make a difference? Several days ago, I think it was Monday or something like that, just before the election, I posted this short video by Brian McLaren. And this short video has already seen 1,000 reposts from my Facebook page and more on Twitter and some on Instagram, and 100,000 views. And a lot of people commented, but I only want to read one of the comments. But first, let me say, just for those who haven't seen it, in short, what Brian McLaren said in this video is, something is trying to be born. Something is dying. The world of white supremacy is dying. Angry men, that world is dying. A world of exclusion. And then this is where I want to share someone's reply. And this person, he understood not to claim simply God is in control. And he posted this after the election. His name is Greg Larson, and we've since been in touch. Greg Larson is in Grand Rapids, Michigan. He's the pastor of a church there, United Church of Christ. And I have several people in that denomination that I'm fond of. But here's what Greg Larson wrote, as though he were writing for Brian, even though Brian would not see this until I forwarded it to him. He wrote this on my Facebook. Greg says, Brian, this comment comes from a place of love and respect. You've done quite a bit of good work in the name of the faith. You've successfully published. You led a megachurch, which I'm sure came with a healthy compensation package. This isn't my case. I've led mostly small churches, which the overwhelming majority of us pastors lead, with minimal or shrinking benefit packages. Our pensions are barely keeping up with the costs of living by the time we can retire, if we can at all. I think I'd have the same hope if I were in your position. But truth is, the majority of us are not. I find these words steeped or based on a level of comfort I can't afford. The birth I'm feeling is the birth of further and deeper economic hopelessness. The birth of realizing paycheck to paycheck isn't going to cut it in 4 years, if that. The birth of losing my health care and not being able to afford any. The birth of fascism and loss of power. Even the power of privilege I was born with, by the way, which I acknowledge is my last asset. He's talking about him being a white male. I'd love to hope like you, Brian. I'd love to be comfortable enough to say these things, but I'm too worried about my well-being and the well-being of those who share my financial class. That being said, I'm welcoming any generous donations to me and my daughter that anyone is willing to give, because I'm on the cusp of begging anyway. So this pastor, Greg Larson, he didn't say anything like God is in control. He said, it feels like everything is out of control. My reply to him was this: that's real. I'm the pastor of a small church too, and I'm honored that these folks have taken responsibility for my family as much as they possibly can, especially since the church world we've been a part of no longer shows interest in our presence and our work for several reasons, but mostly because years ago we abandoned dogmatism and outdated theologies. We're out here on our own, and yet, even though I feel further compelled to look out for my trans and immigrant siblings and my own African-American kids, I see the resistance to progress and humanity as our primary obstacle. I still want to love my way to change, but yes, the threats are real. And then Greg replied to that saying, I'm so sorry this is happening. You have an honest ally, friend, support in me. And so Greg and I, we've communicated a few times since then. We recognize that things are soon going to get ugly, pandemonium. And I attribute a lot of this to male God, to white male God, to cis white male God. If God is on the throne, you are the throne. We are the throne, the earth, the cosmos. And before I stop today, I'm going to urge you to feel your feelings, acknowledge and respect your feelings. We have, I know this sounds counterintuitive, but we have an awesome opportunity. This is a time for introspection personally and collectively, not for self-blame. Maybe you didn't see it coming. Maybe you were shocked with your country, but why blame yourself for believing in people? Why blame yourself for hoping for something better? For continuing to love when your love was lied to? See the possibilities in this moment of introspection. Look at your life. Look at you. You have grown. You have grown so strong. We have grown so strong. And now we will grow stronger. In John 13:35, Jesus says, your love for one another will prove to the world that you are my disciples. I'd say it this way, perhaps. Your love for one another will prove that you are my real ones. There's identity in our solidarity and our intimacy. Look at you. Look at your life. Look at who you're becoming. That's the true wealth. Look at your people, your connections. Look at the ways you can selflessly sacrifice for someone else. You probably can't even think of the ways you've sacrificed for others because it's just who you are. But you are so full of love, and I want to affirm that. You want to heal those who are hurting, and you're hurt pretty bad yourself. You want to protect the defenseless, and you're probably pretty defenseless yourself. Let's pray. Holy Source, beyond all naming, labels, titles, your very presence brings healing. So we open our hearts to you. Our hearts are articulate to you. They make a lot of sense to you even when they don't make sense to us. And together we know that you hear us. Lord, hear our prayer. Amen.
I had a big, deep breath after that one. Yes. Oh. There's so many things. One thing, talking about that Brian McLaren video and talking about birthing things and talking about control, and oftentimes we don't go towards where the chaos is, where the pandemonium is, because we want control, because we feel out of control. But the thing is, like, if our faith, our love, it grounds us, so therefore we can move towards the turbulence. Like, we believe in who we are, what we've done, and that we are aligned and in solidarity with the right things. We have not messed up. We have not. We have stood with the body of beloveds out there, and so I think I guess the encouragement I hear in that is to. I mean, right now, yes, we're in our fields, but the encouragement is we have the ability to move towards the turbulence, and it will be turbulent. And I heard also in your last remarks that we are wounded right now, and we will continue to be wounded. So the call is for us to be wounded healers. There isn't a particular place we need to be to go be a part of the change, to go out there and be building networks and doing things on the ground in the community to make sure people are safe. But we will continue to be wounded, but we will also continue to be healers at the same time. And so, I don't think I really have a question. I think I hear how do we make space for people to show up in their anger, their hurt, their pain, but also continue to move in ways of protection, in ways of patience, in ways of compassion, but also in ways of fierce and radical protection and radical love. So, because that will be needed during this moment, and that's maybe not for this moment right now, but just that needs to stay. That is the eyes on our prize right now. That is our prize, is protection and growth of community. Anybody have any questions, remarks? You can go ahead, just to come unmute. I can't see the chat, right? Or I can't see it. Or you can put it in the chat if you want.
Sure. Hey, y'all. It's Ana Rosa.
Ana Rosa, thank you.
So I feel like since we're invoking the concept of birth, I think it's really important to talk about how, like, when you are birthing, at least when I was birthing for my first time, I could feel myself like shying away from the pain. And instead of realizing that the more I can accept it and see that that is an integral part in like getting my baby, right? And I feel like we keep resisting it. We're hoping that it's going to come an easy way, right? But revolution is not easy. And it's the project of changing people's hearts and minds. And I think what has been happening is we all think we can go to our corners with our opinions and not talk to each other. And we have seen that that doesn't work. Like, that's what those results show. The more we think that we're separate, it doesn't work, because that's not the reality. If you all have heard the term that is in Lak'ech, it means you are my other me. So until we recognize that you are my other me, there's nothing else that will work. And so I agree, like, yes, let's feel our feelings, let's grieve. But I feel like there's this saying, today we mourn, tomorrow we organize. I think that's actually inaccurate, because grieving is an integral part of organizing. And I think that because people in this country don't seem to want to talk about grief, like, that's also why we can't integrate it, because we need to vocalize and talk about what it means to grieve. So yeah, just wanted to share those tidbits that the pain is necessary. Although, I mean, with hypnobirthing, that kind of throws off that analogy, because I actually didn't experience pain with Gloria's birth, but you know, like, it's teamwork. The other part of that birth, I would say, is like you cannot have a birth without the teamwork with your baby, right? So like, I could literally feel Gloria trying to be born, and we were working as a team. And so I feel like if we can at least get people to enlist in the idea that they're in this together with us, and know they might not know all the answers, and they might be clumsy, their words and how they move forward, but at least they know that they have something to learn. We all have something to learn, right? There's so much to learn. And I think that that's part of what excites me about this moment in time, is the opening of our hearts and minds to learn from.
Yeah, thank you for that, Ana Rosa.
Its general terms is there's 5 or 6 different steps depending on who you ask, and it's anger and denial and bargaining and sadness and acceptance. And it's not linear. You can go from one, you can go to the other, and go back and forth, all different kinds in different ways. But just being able to name that for yourself is really important, and how we're able to move and be with one another in that grief. So we can all go from different parts of that and be with each other in each of those different spaces. So yeah, thank you, Ana Rosa, for bringing up that grief, but also that power of staying in your body. I heard you, like, the power of staying in your body and listening, and the trust that we can move through this, the way that you move through the birthing process.
Press that little microphone.
I did.
In the top right hand corner.
Big Clint, you got something?
Yeah, that one.
Hello,
Is that Clint?
Matt. Can you hear
What's
me?
up? It is. Yeah, Big Clint, I got you.
Okay, sorry. I got this little speaker thing going on, so it's kind of funny. But yeah, I got it. There we go. So Matt, it's funny you're sharing this. You know, either you or Anna, either one of you two need to run for Congress. I'm telling you this. And
We need the
and I'm a
team.
promoter.
It's the
I
money
can
behind
promote
it.
you. Trust me, I'm good at this. I'm a salesman, and you got a message to give. And there's hope in that. And here we are united together. And what are we doing? We're talking about Christ, and we're celebrating that. And that's what we need to be doing. That's where we're at, right? And here's something that's important to think of. And I think of this when I said the recovery of a nation.
Mm-hmm.
If you look at the country as a whole, in my alcoholism, I was an alcoholic and I was an addict. People could tell me that all they wanted. All the frothy emotional pill wouldn't have changed that until I sought for myself. In this same situation, there's a ton of people who, you know what, you go, they're abandoning logic. They're not looking at anything. Guess what? All the frothy emotional pill is not going to get them to see that. They have to come to that conclusion on themselves for themselves. It's a spiritual growth that's going to happen. And so at the end of the day, we have a community that's already spiritually evolved and following Christ. That's all we need. Just keep doing the right things, keep being good, keep being that light that shines for those people that need it. That's all God, hey, that's all God wants me to do is be kind and loving to everybody. And as long as I'm doing that, I'm doing the right thing. And we do that here. So we're good.
Yeah.
And you know what? Our brothers and sisters, we pray for them. We love them just the same. Because guess what? They're spiritually sick. And when they get right, guess what? They'll recognize it and they'll do the things, the steps to make amends for that. You know what I mean? But we're just the lucky ones who kind of got to there first. That's all. And that's all I got. Thanks.
Hey, Clint, I have a question for you, something I've been wrestling with, and so
Sure.
it can kind of contribute to this conversation a little bit. In that, I kind of heard this a lot in Trump's first term, where people are like, "Oh, he's the epitome of the disease. You know, he's a cancer, that kind of thing." And as somebody with a disease, I felt like some kind of way about that, you know. And I know, like, some people call addiction a disease, so maybe you might relate to that too. But I don't think calling Trump or the symptoms out there in the world, like the things we're experiencing as disease or cancer, is the proper diagnosis. I think we need to look at it from more of a, this is my argument now, so I'm curious what you think, of looking at it from more of an abuse standpoint, and that we are working with people can change. You don't have to continue to be in it. It's not always writing.
Hold on, hon.
But because if you just call it a disease or like, oh, they're sick, then it's kind of like a forgotten thing, you know, like or it's like we need to fix them, and it's not about fixing, it's about healing. So and yes, people are sick and they heal, but like healing is like an intern. I don't know. So I'm curious what you think about that difference.
Okay, so here's my thought on this. So the sickness, when I say a spiritual malady or spiritual disease, right? You know, it's not a cop out. It's the truth. So for me, you know what? Like when somebody says addiction is not a disease, it certainly is. It's a spiritual disease. It's a sickness of the soul. So that's important. Yeah. So, you know, a lot of people just equate it with like, oh, well, that's a sickness. Guess what? The beauty of having a sickness is that you can get well. If you take the right prescriptions, you get well. Or if you take the right steps to, like, if you're diabetic and let's say, you know what you're eating is creating high blood sugar, change your diet. It's the same thing with changing the diet of what you think and how you treat people. You know what I mean? So for me, I'd rather think, you know what, this is a spiritual disease, because then it offers the opportunity for those people to get well. Yeah, I see that. I guess for me, I feel some different way about it, because I don't see mine as a spiritual disease. So mine's just like a disease that took some vision from me, you know. So, yeah. So just curious. Thank you for your input on that. Appreciate that. There was a point early in Pastor's sermon I want to bring up. It was like one of the earlier points about people wanting control, and I was thinking about my trauma work background, and there's something, you know, if you on a 1 to 10 scale, if anybody's over a 5 in their experience of reliving trauma, triggering whatever the heightened feeling of the emotional dysregulation. So if you're anywhere over in the 5 to 10 range, the brain will actually create an othering that will take place. So because it wants safety, it will actually put people, organize them of safe, not safe, and you create binaries. And so when we're in that heightened place, we feel threatened. And when the body feels threatened, then we move into the othering part, because we need to make it a way out for safety. And so in those heightened places, in that place of feeling threatened, that is not the time to, or the suggestion is that that's not the time to be thinking about decisions or the actions, or like there's a lot of energy there. There's anger there. There's anxiety. There's worry. There's concern. There's compassion. But getting that grounding, kind of like Pastor talked about on Wednesday, that
where we're finding ourselves with our people, that solidarity, rooting ourselves back in the groundedness of solidarity, and we can get that emotional regulation, and then take those steps forward. It's so I guess just people being aware of their level of triggerness, their dysregulation that may occur, in the times in which that the threats can be felt. So I wanted to bring that up earlier, just so people can feel compassionate towards themselves and see others and why they might be engaging in particular ways in particular moments, and the ways that we can support one another.
So, yeah, Matt, you brought up trauma responses, and I thought, you know, a lot of things can be explained by trauma responses, even if they're not legitimate. I mean, you see when you see, an Israeli acting belligerently towards a child, that's a trauma response. You know, they've been conditioned to be that way. All right, so we have Robina and then Elena. Yay, Pakistan is in the house.
Thank you. So my question essentially is to you, Pastor David. I am so glad that you read out the response of one of your friends to the post that you posted by Brian McLaren. My question simply is, what was going on in your mind when you posted it? Because what it represented to me when I saw it, and I've been training myself to be in the habit of not reacting, whether it's through social media or otherwise, but some days I just feel compelled to say what I want to say. I am so glad that your new friend Greg Lawson responded the way he did, and that you were able to identify what he was pointing out. But what I saw in that post, I felt despair, because this was someone not recognizing what was going on around him. So help me understand what was going on in your mind. And I say this with love for someone who has stood with me. I say this with love for a community that is wonderful, that I've grown with and learned from every single time that I've participated. I just felt really despondent reading that post.
Thank you.
So you're asking, and sorry, everybody, you can tell I'm having camera issues, but anyway, you're asking why I posted what Brian wrote, or why what Brian said. Because I believe in birth. I mean, I believe that we are part of some kind of inclusive, transcendent. You know, notice that Brian said something's trying to be born. He didn't say that it was actually being born. He said it was trying to be born. And I think that's what's happening. I think that the world of egalitarianism, the world of inclusivity, the world of love is in fact trying to be born. But then, you know, we saw the reaction in the election, and that really is kind of fulfilling what Brian said too. He says it's the world of the angry whiteness, you know? I mean, that's a big part of what's going on. So that was on my mind. And yes, Greg's response to the post did indicate despair and frustration. And that's why I just responded with, that's real. I mean, what he's experienced, you experienced. A lot of us together have experienced. So, yeah.
Ravina, did that meet you, or how did that sit with you?
Yeah, I always am hesitant because I don't want to seem that I'm personally attacking anyone.
Yeah.
But I think there's always a time to ask questions and uncomfortable questions. And
Mm.
for me, what that represented, it reminds me of Westmont. Anything like that reminds me
Mm.
not just of whiteness, but it reminds me of mainstream Christianity, which is deceptive,
Mm.
which hides what is actually the reality. So I'll stop there.
Mm. Thank you.
Well, that's
That's a
something to
good
contemplate. I mean, yeah. I mean, we love you, Rubina. We love when you weigh in. Yeah, I do.
one. Mhm.
Elena.
Well, I guess something that I was thinking about on a drive after the election was how much like gaslighting is going to be happening around like the blaming of who's responsible for this outcome, and you know, name a minority and that's been exploited in some way, and feeling my own anger, like just deep anger, and feeling through that. And thank you, Ana Rocio, for your raising up like the pains of labor and like our discomfort with grief and pain, and how essential it is to experience that. And I guess I the thing that I landed on is like around how I can't even be mad at Democrats in the way that I want to right now. It's like really a political system that's rigged for special interests, for money. It's, Citizens United. It was that shitty Supreme Court decision that just upended our political system. And until we figure out how to collectively strategize to undo that, like I just feel like that's such an integral part of everything, every issue I care about. So, and like channeling my energy towards a thing, like, and I don't know how to work on that. Like I follow a bazillion organizations that are working on this issue, but I don't see any movement on it. And so I'm feeling kind of frustrated in that, so I don't know. Thank you for letting me like just name that in my process and where I'm at with it right now.
And thank you for naming it. And let me just say, hello, Amira. That orange looks really good, Amira.
Say thanks. Thank you.
So Jacob is here.
Yes, can you hear me?
We
Yes.
hear you.
Question, and I really appreciate the discussion today. I've been feeling a lot of hope in the past couple of days, and I can't explain why, but I realized as a word try it must not be good to go around telling people how much hope I'm feeling. So any advice on should I keep my hopefulness a secret? How do I sit with people who don't have hope when I have hope? How do I not trigger people by talking about how hopeful I am? Any advice would be great.
Yeah, Jacob, I felt that way in 2016 actually. I was living with people that were we were all doing a lot of organizing in 2016, and they'd been doing things a bit longer than I had. But I had this sense of hope. I was just riding the bus, and I can just sense the level of despair around me, and just walking around town just felt eerie. And my friends were, just yeah, feeling it, and I was like, I had a little bit of lightness in my feet. So I guess if you're asking for advice, I'll say be strength for others. You don't have to say I have hope, but you can be the one checking in on others, or showing up with some, little extra liveliness, a little extra pep, and just being that kind of like holding that optimism, that holding that belief of something can change and pointing people towards the light of like, hey, there can be positives that we can find here, and the energy that your energy of hope will be something that people will want to partner with, that will want to be in relationship with. So don't see it as something that you need to hide, but also see it as something that can be shared.
Thank you. I just don't want to come off as superficial to anyone, particularly given I was middle class from age.
Yeah, I think just don't go around with what they say, pumping sunshine. They'll be like, don't be gaslighting people with positive vibes.
Okay.
But yeah, just be a stronghold that people can lean on. Be support. I
Yeah.
think we need you. We need you.
Sunny?
Sunny's in the house.
Good morning, fam. How you guys doing?
What's up? Hey.
Yeah, I'm happy to be on here and happy to have Gabby here joining me. And yeah, you know what, Pastor Moore, you always blow me away. You're always like 3 years ahead of me, like in my thinking. You're probably way more than that, but like I remember like some years back, you would tell me like I was a stressed out parent and a contractor, and you'd tell me like, and I'd always like it's survival mode, thinking about what I got to do next, what kind of jobs, and you'd be like, you just need to be still. You need to meditate. And I get so frustrated, be like, oh, is being still going to pay my bills? Like, oh my God, what are you talking about? And then now, over the last few years, you've been transitioning or talking about things in the world. And for me, I was like, what's the relativity in that? Like, I don't understand. And as we talk about this, I feel like a little insensitive because as someone who's struggled in my addiction, I've always ended up in these situations of rebirth, right? Where I'm always having to start over. I'm always living in moments of disruption. So for me, like it's real easy for me to get insensitive and just be like, the world's burning down again. It's just a Monday for me. It's just another day. But in my time of stillness, in my time of quietness, there's this prayer that's been coming to me, and I know it as the 11-step prayer, and things you're talking about resonated. And I don't want to say the chorus of it, but the middle part of the prayer is it goes like, where there is discord, I may bring harmony. That where there is error, I may bring truth. That where there is doubt, I may bring faith. That where there is despair, I may bring hope. That where there are shadows, I may bring light. That where there is sadness, I may bring joy. And so I try to go through this whole ocean of opinions, right? Remembering there's this thing being said about how our human eye can only capture like 0.035 of the available radiation out there, right? So I can only see very limited of what's around me, right? And so that's been my story, my point of view too in life. So I'm always careful about what I think is true and beating other people over the head with what I think is true. But I'm glad to be back here. I'm glad to be back here and listening. For me, like some people, like when they come to my house, they're like, Sonny Urzula, grandson of Louis Urzula, what are you doing with an American flag on your wall? What are you doing with all this other stuff, right? And at my perception, and so it's more of a tributary, right? Because I have that one and the Mexican flag behind me. And but so for me, like this weird thing, kids ask me when they saw me hung, like, do you love America, like whatever? And so for me, my thing is, this is gonna sound weird. I dislike the United States. To me, that's like a corporation, right? And then there's America, the dream, right? This dream, this dream of where everybody's included, my kids, my family, of land of opportunity, this thing. And so this same pattern of the Mexican flag and American flag was positioned my grandpa's house, same thing. And he used to tell me, you're a Mexican American, and you're not a second class citizen. And where I grew up, I was the only brown kid in my school, pretty much in Hope Ranch, and I always kept my chin to the high because I had this dream, right? And the dream was instilled in me that I wouldn't lower my chin anywhere I went, and that I'd always walk with my shoulders square and my chin up. And but like I said, I only see a little bit, right? And so as I'm here trying to be a learner, trying to be a student, I just thank you, Pastor Warren. And I know you guys think my name's Sonny, but it's Ketchup. Always trying to catch up. You know what I mean?
Yeah, that's the Sonny I know. I mean, every picture I see of you, your chin is up.
If you catch up, then you got some mustard too. You got the mustard of faith.
But
No,
you want to say?
I don't know if I can.
Brigitta was going to weigh in before we stop.
I just wanted to share a message that I put in chat for Jacob, because I wasn't sure if Jacob actually would get it and see it. But I just wanted to say personally to Jacob that his hopefulness is just precious to me. And I hope that he'll share it with gentleness and love with everybody, because he's a light of the world. So, kiss to you.
All right. Yeah. And okay, so we're gonna stop with Ana Rosa. She started it, and I guess she's gonna end it.
Yes, I would say that I'm kind of with Jacob as far as I mean, I'm driving. I could put the video on, but I don't know how much you'll be able to see because I'm driving. But let's see.
Don't worry.
Hi. So I feel like I'm kind of in the place of Jacob too, with a little bit more hope than I think a lot of other people have right now. But that's because I've been mourning who I was hoping this country could be since the reaction against those of us who have been fighting against the genocide, well, multiple genocides, and just to see that the Democrats have reacted pretty much just as negatively as the Republicans have, just for folks who are standing up for life. And so I think that has allowed me to just kind of come to grips with where we're at. And so for that reason, I was not surprised on Wednesday. But I also think that, the first time that Trump won, I think people could have thought of it as a fluke. But now that it happened again, and with more resounding numbers, I think it's forcing people to realize where we are actually at as a country. And there's been a lot of coverage. I'm going to try to look for it, but there's actually a post that I just saw this morning of this Chinese American man asking this white man about why he voted for Trump. And he said the quiet part out loud. He said, if Trump can avoid white people from being dispossessed in this country as long as possible, then that's worth voting for, because it was my ancestors that created this country. And they didn't have Mexicans or Chinese people in mind when they did that. So, like Pastor Moore mentioned in the beginning, we have to battle the Trump within all of us. Some of us have a little bit more Trump than others, but regardless, it's going to take a lot of introspection and all of us killing the colonizer inside of us and seeing how we can reach out to others in a way that reminds us, kind of like what I said earlier, that we are part of one human family, and that abundance is real, and we need to stop living in a scarcity model.
Thank you for that. I think Robina would gladly support and help anybody who wants to kill the internal colonizer, but we have to do it ourselves. Yeah, so we're going to move on to our time of communion. This is a conversation that'll keep happening, keep growing. We will keep growing. And Brigitte is going to lead us in communion today.
Well, as I was preparing for communion today, it occurred to me that thousands of years ago, there was also a type of election or struggle for the people. They had the Roman Empire, we had the Jewish religious factions, and a newcomer with radical ideas, Jesus, who spoke of love for your neighbor. I'm struck by the similarities with today in that back then the people didn't choose the one who could actually make their lives better and more beautiful, even to the point of picking Barabbas, a criminal, over Jesus when they were given an opportunity to actually pardon someone. Now, I'm not suggesting that anybody today is like Jesus, that we had any opportunity to vote for Jesus, but the public making unbelievable choices is nothing new. In the Last Supper, Jesus gathered all of his disciples and prayed over them. And he gave them guidance and warned them about the future, telling them that terrible things were about to happen and that difficult times were coming. But at the same time, he provided a means for everyone to remember his love and his guidance for them, and to remind us of the ultimate forgiveness that all of us get for the things that we have done and our acceptance into God's kingdom. So he took a loaf of bread, and after he broke it, well, first of all, he gave thanks and he got the blessings on the bread, but then he broke it. And he said, "Take and eat this. This is my body. Do this in remembrance of me." And so please take your bread and eat it. And then he took a cup, and after giving thanks, he gave it to all of them, saying, "This is my blood, the covenant which is poured out for many for the forgiveness of sins. Drink from it, all of you." And amen. I think we at least have an example of how life is and how life can be. Have a good week.